Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yay. Keith Orlean and Gregg Johnson here for BizTalk Weekly. And we have as a guest today, Terry Rich, author, speaker, entrepreneur, and whatever else Terry's going to tell us about himself.
That's good to be here.
Yes.
Welcome, Terry. We're glad to have you.
Always fun. Yep.
All right. So we'll get the party started. So Terry, just, give us a little background, what you've done. We see you're a young guy like us. So it's, you're just getting started in the world. So give us a little background here.
Sure. Grew up on a farm, and I think you learn a lot of principles on the farm: hard work, the friendships, helping other people. Went to school as a math major and thought, I want to be a math teacher. About halfway through, someone said, "Hey, you can go over here, talk, and make a living." Now, whoa, the heck, I can handle that. So I got into TV and radio. And coming out of school, I really didn't have any plans. All my buddies got jobs at broadcast TV and had some people come in and talk about this thing called cable television. So I raised my hand, volunteered, and started in the cable television world. And it seemed like, just like on the farm, it seems like you always want 2 or 3 jobs going to make sure you make ends meet. And so I started doing rock and roll DJ on a radio station on the weekends. Well, we did cable television, but cable television was very entrepreneurial, really fun, and it really took off. I mean, we couldn't touch anything that didn't seem to be successful. And then when I turned 40, well, it happens. Someone came in and threatened to buy our company, take over because it was doing so well. And so we cashed it out. Well, we started with a leverage buyout, and lo and behold, I didn't really realize what that was, nor did I know what stock options were, but it proved to be a pretty nice thing at age 40. So all of a sudden, I don't have a job. They decided to merge everything together, as many companies do. And I thought, well, I'm going to start my own. So I started doing, and I'll tell you kind of how we got into that transition and why it's important, all the new things you do to continue to learn and try new things. Started doing cable television free previews for HBO, ESPN, that sort of thing. Spent 10 years doing all sorts of fun things. Bought a radio station, all sorts of interactive. Instead of MP3, we started an MP1 company to digitize videos at the time. But at age 50, midlife crisis, I thought, geez, I'm going to retire. I want to be with my family. I'm traveling. I've made the money I want to make. What do you do next? So I got a call from an ex-governor who said, hey, they're going to shut down the zoo. The city's going to give it up, and we're going to start a nonprofit. Would you like to help us turn it around and run a zoo? So I ran a zoo for 4 or 5 years. We got it going, turned it around. Did a big endowment to keep it going, and got a call from the next governor who said, would you like to run the lottery? And I thought, well, $3.5 million budget for a zoo and $350 million for the lottery. Why not? And during that time, all of a sudden, I came from a marketing and sales perspective to a manager of the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history. We put a guy in prison for up to 25 years for that fraud. So that's been my history. I'm retired now and do a lot of public speaking on both of those issues, innovation and how to prevent fraud internally. And so it's been a really fun life.
That's exciting. So
That's a great story.
So tell us a little bit about your speaking and what you speak on and how you go about, one, how you started to get into speaking, and two, how do you go about getting speaking engagements?
Sure. Well, it all started probably 2 or 3 years into my lottery career. I was North American Lottery president, and we had these big conferences, and I saw the budget to spend $40,000-$50,000 for a speaker. And I watched the speaker and thought, heck, I can do that. That's what I've done all my life, broadcast and television and being on TV, right, and the live, all that sort of thing. So I started the business by just hitting the local clubs and trying to tone what my message was going to be, kind of tune it up and see what people reacted to. And once it really got going, and then people said, well, we have a budget of, you always ask, well, is there a budget? And once they said they had a budget of 500 or $1,000, I thought, well, that's good beer money, if nothing else. So I continued to do that, and ultimately then got an agent. And when you get an agent, then they help pitch you and look for things, because they're the ones that are really into the conferences. I knew the money was in the big conferences. but the beauty, you need something when you retire. I figured that is fun, but yet not grueling, where you have to do it all the time, worry about, all of these different things. And I didn't like writing reports. I didn't really want, I was asked to consult all over the place, but I didn't really want to consult and have, I don't know, it's called the pressure, but I wanted something that'd be fun to do. So basically it's a great retirement gig because they pay you to go in, they pay all your expenses to get into anything. I spend 2 or 3 days, like I went to Germany and spent a week and just walked around and looked around Germany and learned about all sorts of things. They write you a check and you don't have to, you don't have to write a report. So public speaking, I think, is one of the most fun. Now, those that do it full time, you got to have, if you're going to do it full time, it's really off. It has a lot of pressure because you've got to make the money because that's where your money is. For me, it was a retirement gig, and it's really fun for be able to do and travel the world and see things. So it's a really nice retirement gig.
You do global speaking.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been to Germany, Switzerland, I mean, all over. And then the other thing I do, and because I don't care really about the money, is I love doing these podcasts. I've done a couple hundred, podcasts in the last few years. And the same kind of deal. I get to meet fun people like you and learn things myself while I'm doing that, but still get the enjoyment of being able to tell a story and to have fun with what I'm doing. So that's kind of what the speaking gig's all about.
When you're invited to speak, Terry, what is typically the topic? Like, do you have a specific topic, or do you kind of vary what it is you speak about depending on the audience?
I have 2 topics. I speak to a lot of IT, banks, that sort of thing, on internal fraud based on the Eddie Tipton story, which is the largest lottery fraud in U.S. history that I led a team to bust and find out how it was done and all the techniques of looking for things and having checks and balances within your system to do that. Because it's a real entertaining story, because it took a hot dog, a Bigfoot, and a lottery ticket to solve that crime. The other one that I do a lot on is innovation. A lot of people are stuck. They're brand new, what is AI? How does that work? I don't really get into the technical side of it. I get into stories talking about ways to create new ideas within your business, because every business has to grow. Everybody thinks, well, we're doing good. Why do we need to change? It's, you hear that a lot, but the world changes. And all of a sudden, instead of just this little market that you have that you're making a lot of money on, you can sell globally. So you've got to learn how to reach out to all demographics and sizes, shapes, and forms to be able to do it. So that's kind of fun because it sends people back in creating an innovative environment within an organization to continue every day thinking of new ideas. I liken it to a small business that finally starts thinking about research and development. All large businesses have research and development. Why do they do that? Because they're looking for ways to grow their business. Small companies just, how do I get through today? I need 3 more sales. I need 3 more things to do. And so I talk about always trying to keep things on the shelf and new ideas and developing new ideas to grow your business.
Conceptually, big or small, there's this proper way to build a business doesn't change.
That's right.
The only difference is that, bigger companies have more money. So,
Magnitude.
how do you teach somebody who's on a limited budget to actually do the things that the big guys do?
It's pretty simple. Write everything down, every idea. Everybody goes to bed at night and you have an idea and then you forget about it the next morning, right? So have a pencil by your bed. The 2 techniques I talk about is daring to dream. First off, all you want to do, you guys look like you drink wine. So you think about out in wine country, when they go out, they don't go out and pick their grapes off their own vines every day. They go all through the valley and look for, differences in temperature and climate and minerals and that sort of thing. And pick the one grape after they get 100 grapes that they think will be that award winner that'll make them a lot of money. Same thing in a business. And we talk about having no judgment. That means that you tell everybody, when we get the idea stage, there cannot be judgment. So, we want to get rid of the no mans. The people go, no man, that'll never work, and shake their head, whatever they do. So when you brainstorm, you want everybody to give the ideas and write every idea is a good idea. Write all the ideas. So you fill this bushel basket with 100 ideas and you just put it aside. Then you do step 2, where the lawyers and the accountants and everybody else can say, that ain't going to work. This is going to, but the whole group decides and they prioritize which of those 100 ideas is the best. And now you've got 1 or 2 ideas up on top that are percolating that the entire team has agreed upon. And now you've got some ideas that you can start to develop and decide, because you've already gone through and making that decision that which ones cost less that we can afford to do today and try to do today. So it's kind of that 2-step process is what I try to demonstrate ways to do. And then I talk about the stories of things like being at the zoo where we had absolutely no money. They were losing 600,000. What can we do today? Because we're going to spend $2 million to have a new exhibit. That's the only way we're going to do it. Well, I said, what do we have today that's free that we can get more kids or more adults into? And we came up with 2 ideas. One was, well, every animal poops, so let's start an exhibit, Scoop on Poop, which means that people can come in and see what tiger poop looks like or giraffe poop looks like. More for the kids, like, oh, they giggle. Then they go tell their friends at school. Now, all of a sudden, we had people coming through the door, and that $600,000 negative cash flow, we immediately put it in the black. The other idea is we said, well, we've got every kid 2 to 12. How do we get the young adults, the millennials of those days? How do we get them through the door? And we said, well, what do they like? Again, we didn't have any money. And then we thought they like booze. All right, let's have a zoo brew. At night, let's allow no young kids. Let's just allow adults. Let's put in a band. Let's have the animals out, and let's have some music and let them come out and start the zoo brew. Last year, they sold over $250,000 just in booze at these zoo brews at the zoo. So right away, it turned the whole thing around. Because the keeper said, well, we need money to take care of the animals. That's what our mission is. And I said, well, if we can find other ways to make the money, you get a piece of that. And all of a sudden they had some more money that they never had before to actually do animal enrichment. Now everyone was happy. So you see, looking for ways to get crazy ideas, whether you have money or not, is a fun one. I got $1 million idea at the end of this show I'll tell you about that. I'm trying to figure out how to do right now that I'll tell everybody. Maybe somebody out there will help me figure out how to do it.
Well, that would be fun. So
That gives us something to look forward to.
Yeah, I want to keep going. Now, maybe I want to end early. I want to know.
That'd be a way to shut her down, wouldn't it?
so you've obviously had a very interesting career, and which I'm fascinated listening to you and hearing about your stories. The fun thing about entrepreneurship is that your mind is always engaged. I wake up in the middle of the night, and some of my middle of the night ideas are just crazy, but needless to say, I'm 67 and I don't feel it. I feel like I'm 37.
Our minds are at 20, but our bodies are
my energy level is just constantly churning. I love business, and Gregg and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and we started talking about life, careers, and things that we've done in our own lives. And Gregg had just started a business. Okay, after being, well, I'll let Gregg tell his own story, and I've been a lifetime entrepreneur, and that's how we both got into, 1, the podcast, and 2, I'd already started coaching on the sales side. So Gregg, I'm going to let you tell your story, and this is how we've evolved. You're on mute, Gregg.
Oh, I think your mic's off, Gregg.
Yep. I've spent 30 plus years in business, working for business owners. I was CFO, COO for mid-sized niche businesses, where I was able to really, like you said, Terry, really innovate with folks and help them grow their businesses. And I think what's so great about innovation is, as you said before, it's those innovative ideas at first sound crazy, and then they start to take shape, and all of a sudden they're not crazy. But boy, when you first hear them, you get a lot of naysayers.
Mm-hmm.
But so through that time I was working for entrepreneurs, I finally decided, I'm going to be an entrepreneur myself. And I wanted to, just like you said, Terry, I wanted to end my work career doing something different, really where I felt like I could really help people. And it truly is not about the money. It truly is about taking the experiences I've had and being able to share those with especially young entrepreneurs who I think there's so many of them out there now. And I just feel like, man, I got stuff to share that if you'll give me the opportunity, I really feel like I can impact how you go about growing your business.
People ask us all the time, what would you tell a young person? I have a couple, three. One is I tell college kids as they're coming out, first thing you want to do is raise your hand. Someone says the toilet's broke, janitor's not here, I need somebody to help. You'll be noticed if you just raise your hand. And that has proved very successful to just be noticed and to be working hard. Second is I wish I had learned how to not to slow down, to relax, to be able to feel like totally relaxed. Because it sounds like you guys are like me. You're driving to the grocery store and you made it in 10 minutes. I'm going to make it 9 minutes and 59 seconds next time. I'm always looking at ways, how do we make something a little bit better? And I think the third I learned just a couple, Damon John, who's a Shark Tank. I did an event with him not long ago and he was writing things down. He said, what are you doing? And he said, you know what? I'm just writing down some ideas. I said, you get that many $1 million ideas? He said, no. He said, this is for me. He said, I write down 5 things the night before that I want to do tomorrow for me when I get started. And I thought, whoa, that is kind of interesting. It sounds self-serving, but what he said it does is put him in the right frame of mind to help other people in a positive way. So, I heard my trainer told me, he tells his grandkids, the first thing you do when you get up is make your bed. You've accomplished something. You've done something to make your life in order, and you will be happier as you go through the rest of the day than to come home and see everything in a mess. I thought those are really good. And I also learned it's better to have tried and failed than to succeed at doing nothing. You realize we sent 3 people to the moon. When we sent them to the moon, we didn't do what project managers do, say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. We'll see you in 2 weeks. We're going for lunch. No, they course corrected over 90% of the time. They failed over 90% of the time. And too many people, project managers especially, says, okay, I had an idea. I tried it. Didn't work. I'm done. And I had my first failure when I came out of college. I started doing on-camera TV for this cable television company, and I realized I looked pretty good at 5 o'clock. Didn't have the 5 o'clock shadow. So I wrote Gillette and said, hey, I'm happy to do a TV commercial. I love your razor. And knowing that in 2 weeks I'd get a letter heading me for New York to do a TV commercial. 2 weeks later, I got that letter. And during that time, I started thinking, just like you might when you play Powerball, what if I win? What would I do? I thought, what if I got this job? And lo and behold, I got the letter and said, dear Mr. Rich, expressing your complete satisfaction with your Track 2 razor, you wrote the wrong company. The other company makes this. Here's their address. So I failed, but you know what? I got the inspiration to take the next step, back to the success aspect of what you're trying to do. And that's what got me to the next step of thinking I want to be on national television. And I got a call from not at the business, but from my little hometown of Cooper, Iowa, a town of 50. Farmer said, we're going to have a centennial. We don't know whether they're 100 years old, but we're going to have a centennial anyway. Would you help us promote it? Well, I'd never really done that before. I was a general manager of the cable company at that point. So I said, okay. And so we sat down and we did this brainstorming. We talked about it. And he said, you're our most famous person because you've done TV. And I thought, well, we're our most famous. Let's adopt somebody. Boom, an idea is born. We took that idea and I sent out press releases to 44 different. Well, how I did that was I wrote a press release and said, we want somebody to be the 51st citizen. And so, we've never had anybody famous, just for one day. Help us out, would you please? And I hit the old mimeograph and I printed too many. I was only going to print 5 for the local radio station and stuff, but I had 44. So I went to the library in the next town and sent it to the Miami Herald, London Times, anybody I could think of. And you know what? I failed again, 43 of the 44 times, but I got one call. And that call was from United Press. He said, I'm with UPI, Bruce Canner. Never heard of UPI, but okay. I talked to him. 30 minutes later to the second, I get a call. It said, hey, Terry, this is I'm Jim McCauley. I'm with the Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. Johnny's from Iowa. We saw this press release, would like to do something, but you got to guarantee we'll be first. Okay. Yeah. Hung up the phone to call my buddy. And I couldn't hear a dial tone. And they said, hey, this is Judy Steinberg. And with Good Morning America, we have 2 tickets. We want you to New York this morning. I said, hey, in Iowa, when you give your word, you give your word. She started screaming at me. And anyway, long story short, they talked about doing a satellite uplink, the Carson Show from Cooper, Iowa, never been done before. And they worked hard on that. That really intrigued me, satellite uplink. But they couldn't get it put together in time. And they went ahead and brought 3 of us out there. 20 million people saw us. And lo and behold, Cooper, Iowa had a huge crowd. Almost 15,000 people showed up in a town of 50 for a parade, all because I failed 43 of the 44 times. Well, when the cable system sold out, as I mentioned, we had to do a leverage buyout, and then ultimately they cashed us all out. I had to figure out what to do. And I thought this satellite uplink idea is not a bad idea. So I started doing satellite uplinks for HBO. And no one had ever done them before. And we did the first one, and we sold $15 million worth of business. And lo and behold, again, all back because I failed when I did my letter to the shaving company. And then I failed again by sending 43 of 44. If I hadn't sent all 44 contacts, back to what you were talking about earlier, Keith, on the number of contacts to sales, I would not be sitting here today saying hi to a bunch of new buddies.
Yeah. I tell my
story.
kids who are budding entrepreneurs that, failure is just part of success. It's actually, you haven't succeeded until you failed.
Well, you haven't pushed it hard enough until you failed.
Exactly. You have to be
Right.
willing to take that risk. And you got
Here's the risk, though. Here's the difference. I think the people who are real successful, I got to be friends or get to work with Ted Turner, who's just absolutely crazy. And he lost a lot of money, whatever. As people are thinking about starting, especially after college where they have no money, I would say go to work for someone else for a couple of reasons. One, to build some operating capital, because too many people start their new business without the proper amount of operating capital. So if they stumble, they've still got some money to fall back on to tweak it and keep it going. They just, hey, I did it. I give it up. So, that's one. The other thing you don't learn if you're just starting in a business and you have never done it before is it costs money for insurance, you need legal help. You need, and maybe to bring in people at least on they can be non-paid, just an advisory role to give you some advice to help you get through that. And then finally, once you've made the money, and I'm telling you, it's like cocaine. Success is like, I've never done cocaine, but it tells me it's kind of like cocaine, where once you've had success, you want it again and you want it again, because that drive and that feel is so exciting that you want to make sure that the next one you do, you spend 10%. So I always, every time, when I did the company and started my own companies, I'd take 10% of any profits and look for the next one. What am I thinking of next? What could I start developing next or buy into next? So that's when we bought the radio station, double the money on that one. So you take portions of your money as your risk. Then you've got calculated risk rather than risking your home, your life, and your family anytime you go in. And that's why sometimes going to work for others, like if you go to work at McDonald's, and probably the best way is just do that internship everybody pushes them to, because you can ask a lot more questions. What's your cash flow? What profit? What do you really have? What would you suggest? How do you hire people? What do you pay for insurance? What do I have to budget here? What would you suggest? Because that gives you better basis and a better chance for success once you do take the leap.
What's great about that too, Terry, is even if you're in a situation where you're seeing things that aren't being done right, you can still learn from that. Right?
Absolutely.
You talked about being in that internship, and what if you see a hiring process and it's not working? Well, you can learn from that and say, okay, I've seen what doesn't work.
And it's not your money you're learning with. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Gregg and I,
But once you've gone into entrepreneurship, as you all know, you get to keep all the money. Now it's tough to brag about that money that you're making when you're doing a salary and everybody's around you and geez, they must be making more than I am. That's a little bit, tough to handle, but when it's your own, you don't care. You put it in the bank and you enjoy life.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
very,
from what I've seen, successful entrepreneurs are driven by more than just the dollars and cents. And,
Absolutely.
the money almost becomes a a side benefit, but it's not what really gets them up in the morning and gets them going.
And that's
it's
what
the passion
retirement's
they
like.
have for what they're
Retirement's
doing.
scary because you instead of all this money you were seeing coming in, now all of a sudden you're putting some of it back out, right? So it's
Yeah.
money isn't they say happiness happens on the way to success. So you're happy in that. Once you make your goal, then you say, what the heck am I going to do now? And you look for that next. So you're always looking for ways to get that same high that happens when you're an entrepreneur and you have success.
what's nice about entrepreneurship, and I've always felt this, is there's a sense of freedom that you don't have in a job. The freedom, failure on your own, that you've chosen something, you failed, it was your decision. You made a bad decision.
Versus
Okay.
being fired, which is an awful feeling. I've never been fired, but I assume it's an awful feeling, but I had to fire people. So
The only time I ever got fired,
It is.
1 second, Greg. This was interesting. So I had a summer job through a temp agency in the city. And for the life of me, I think I was like 17 or 18 years old. And I remember I was working and for some odd reason, I decided that I wasn't getting paid enough. Okay. Hello, a temp job, maybe I'm there 2 weeks and I'm asking for a raise. I got fired. It's like, it's so, well, that's just young stupidity, but it
Right.
part
We
of,
learn.
it's part of that entrepreneurial mindset of taking risks. Now, maybe someone would have said, wow, this is interesting. A guy that's a temporary, employee feels so good about himself that he values himself as someone who should make more. Now, of course, I'm extrapolating into an area that becomes much deeper conversation, but I was about to say before that Gregg and I, we always use sports as an analogy, is that the only time you can't get a hit is if you don't swing the bat.
mm-hmm.
So what's you gonna strike out? So what?
And you know what? Being fired, it bothered me when I did it. This number of times I did it until I had a couple of people come back and say thank you. Because what happens usually is if you're firing somebody, they're not right for that fit. They're not doing the proper job. They're not happy. You can be guaranteed if you're not happy, they're probably not happy too. And so you just have to help them to find the right deal. I mean, I've had many, many people who've made and had much more success than I had after they left when I had to fire them because 1, they got the drive, 2, they got into something they really enjoyed and were successful at because it was something they knew about. And by firing them, I actually put them in a better position. And I think most people are in that because when you get to the point of firing, they definitely are not happy in the job that they're doing for you at that point.
Which comes down to something that took me many years to really embrace, called self-awareness. Taking responsibility, okay, for whatever happens and saying, okay, I'm getting fired. Do I have the self-awareness to ask the person who's firing me, what can I do so this doesn't happen to me in the future? Tell
Absolutely.
me where did I fail? Okay. And see if you might not even get an honest answer because some people don't, they're taken back. But again, it's the same theory. If you don't ask, you don't know. I rather know, what I did wrong, not when I was 30, but now I want to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
what's interesting about this conversation today, guys, is Terry, we hadn't met before today. And you commented on a couple of things that Keith and I did previous podcasts on, which is that failing forward, and talking about how you fund your passion, right? How do you fund this startup? Because we've talked about that more than once, Keith, where a lot of times what kills a company is not the fact that they're not making money, it's that they don't have any money in the bank.
Mhm.
So,
Yep, operating
so it's
cash
just
flow is important,
interesting.
and when you
It's
can
just
fund
interesting that
yourself,
here's-
when you can fund yourself, you're not beholden, if you work for someone, you're beholden to the boss. If
Yeah.
you're doing your own and you don't have the cash, you're beholden to the bank. So
Right,
be
right,
careful.
or some lender. Yeah.
All right, so here's the $1 million question. What's your $1 million idea?
Okay, so marketing and sales, as you can tell, were my passion. And when I was the lottery director, we merged Powerball and Mega Millions, so all states could sell both. And so they said, think of some ideas to do a promotion. And so I'm driving home, and it didn't happen in a big group brainstorming. It was driving home, looked up, and I saw the moon, and it was a crescent moon. Oh my God, all we need to do is get a laser or a spotlight, and we could put the jackpot on the dark side in the middle there where the crescent moon is of the moon. We could own the moon as a billboard. So I immediately came back and called my alma mater to the astrophysics and they hung upon me, thought I was some kooky guy. So I called their opposition over in Iowa City, and I got some astrophysicist. He said, yeah, he said, you could do that, but you're going to have to get past the atmosphere because that will break up both a laser and a spotlight. So now I'm thinking, Elon Musk. All we have to do, if anybody knows Elon Musk, that we can get on one of these satellites, get a big spotlight, we could own the moon as a billboard. Now there's $1 million idea. Kind of crazy too, huh?
That is crazy. And he probably want to do it, but he'd probably steal it and make dollars and say, yeah. So I think, I mean, from my own perspective, I've been an entrepreneur for probably my whole life, and I've talked about this in my blogging and on our show. I can remember as a little kid, it was, I think, to some extent, my entrepreneurship was in my DNA. I was just born with it. It's just who I am. And I also like, the feeling of risk, the risk reward factor, I find, very exciting. And so that's really what's driven my crazy career of ups and downs, and that's just the way it is.
And that's funny you say that, Keith, because I'm the complete opposite, right? I don't think I'm an entrepreneur by nature. I think I chose to become one, and that risk reward, you're comfortable with that, and that's sometimes what keeps me up at night.
Absolutely. Every job you think is your last is what I've always found as I'm doing a business.
So entrepreneurship, okay, in its simplest form, is a mindset. And even if you're not born with it, okay, and it's hard work, because how do you change habits? Well, you got to do something over and over again, to make it, actually your brain does not comprehend change until you've done something a certain amount of times. So although it may not be in your DNA, you've certainly, especially since the time we've had the podcast, you learn, okay? You learn the concepts, the strategies of how to be an entrepreneur. Okay, what is the mindset of an entrepreneur? Well, part of that is a willingness to take risk. And even though you're not a risk taker, Greg, you went into business. So you made a calculated risk, probably more so than, you probably did much more research than I would have ever done in my career as an entrepreneur. So I could tell you want to say something. Go ahead.
Well, what's interesting is you said that is, I just thought of the fact that, I spent 25 years working for entrepreneurs. Yeah. So that was my exposure to entrepreneurship. Yep. And that, when you do that, your mentality changes, you see things differently, you get a different perspective on things. And now it's kind of like the light bulb went on. It's like, well, that really impacted me, was the fact that I was around entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, for a good part of my career.
There's a company called Life is Good. You learn, I learned late in life. I heard them speak, And they had a bunch of young group, and everybody come in and say, yeah, I have to come to this. I had to come to this meeting, or I have to do this today, or I have to get this project done. And they switched them around to say, no more I have to anymore. We're going to take the word have out of your vocabulary, and we're going to say get. And so people say, I get to go to the meeting. Then they are realizing right away that they're a vital part of it, that they're, and it's the positive attitude that helps you in taking the next big step. And I think that's part of the mind that you have to be in, that positive, or that Damon John mentioned about writing his name, that he did something positive in the morning before he left, so he's in a good mood, really helps you get in the spirit to go in and know you can do it.
Right, that just comes through loud and clear from you, Terry. I mean, we spent 30 or 40 minutes here, and boy, your positive attitude is just
infectious.
Well,
exactly. I can just feel I can feel it rubbing off on me.
Well, coming in this, it'd be easy to wake up saying, geez, I got to go in and tell my wife I got to go and get this done, versus, man, I just met two great guys that are rocking it and having fun with it. And that's part of the fun attitude.
Tell me this now, next week I get to go to the dentist. Does that work? Or
absolutely, you're at the age where you're going to go in and you're going to have a great smile and a fun time, and they're going in, and it's better than if you were down in some depressed country. You'd be losing your teeth. They'd just be yanking them out, right?
There you go.
Terry, as we end, I always like to ask this, and Gregg and I, we always think, okay, what can we do for you? Okay, that would be helpful to you. And you're an accomplished guy, you're a seasoned guy, but doesn't mean that we can't.
Well, in sales, I would say just go to terryspeaks.com if you need a speech or a keynote speaker at one of your conferences. Go ahead and give me a call. We'll see if it works. But I'm not in doing the podcast for money. I just really enjoy telling stories and saying hello. So that's probably the one thing that would be the easiest for people to just check it out, but do something good for someone else today would be the other thing.
That'd be great. We will send you a file of the MP3. Actually,
perfect.
So this way, for your own content, if you'd like to use it, you can feel free to do so.
And send me the link once you get it posted. I'll try to get it around too, to let people find out about your podcast. That
would be wonderful. Really appreciate it.
We would love that.
And
appreciate
we probably could talk for hours and hours, and we do intend on having you back if you'll be happy to join us again.
Absolutely. No, I enjoy this.
All right, Terry. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Thank you, Terry. It was nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, Terry.